everybody. Welcome to the first round of the inaugural season of the WTCR FIA World Touring Car Cup, presented to you by Oscaro. Here we are in the streets of Marrakech at the circuit Moulay El Hassan, and as if it wasn't tough enough around these streets, the world has decided to add some rain to the mix. Now, I'm down here in the pit lane, and I'm joined by the lovely Pierre Dudonné, sporting manager of Leopard Lukoil team. Pierre, firstly, thank you so much for joining us in the streets of Marrakech. This is quite exciting this weekend, isn't it?
Thank you. Good morning, Alex. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, we're very happy at last. Action is starting. That's what we are here for.
It certainly is. Now, yesterday, Tom Christensen took Gordon Shedden's car out. What did he find out?
Well, you mean technically? Not so much, because the track, was very dirty. A lot of dust. He only did a few laps. He's not fully acquainted to this kind of car. So it was a very nice exercise. Very good for the team, because he is Mr. Tom Christensen. Yeah. And on top of that, he's a good friend of us since a long time. So it was a nice time for everyone, yes.
When I spoke to him, he said that this circuit was going to be very challenging. He was quite excited about the fact that there were going to be 25 cars. And as if it's, like I just said, if it isn't tough enough, we've added rain to the mix. So how does that make you all feel?
Well, it will be extremely exciting, because it's a street circuit. Any mistake here will be paid cash. So all the drivers are very excited, because it's the first go of this championship. So there will be plenty of action. I hope that all car will keep away from trouble. And of course, the fact that it's a damn circuit for the first few laps, the driver will have to keep a cool head and do their job in a sensible way. So we hope they use their brain.
Yeah, it's time for the boys to head out. Let's see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you to Pierre Dudonné, a man who, as a racing driver and recently as a team owner, has been there, done that, and seen it all. Many, many races at Le Mans under his belt, among a lot of others. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the brand new FIA WTCR World Touring Car Cup, presented by Oscaro, a brand new golden era of touring car racing. Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Marrakech. After an early morning shower, a wet track greets the drivers for the first ever track session of the FIA WTCR World Touring Car Cup, presented by Oscaro. I'm Martin Haven. Down in the pit lane, Alex Le Gouy. Sitting alongside me, Richard Coleman. And Richard, Gabriele Tarquini a week ago saying, we are entering a new golden era of touring car racing. We have got a packed grid with some fantastic names. This could be a really epic season.
Absolutely. I mean, the stage is set like never before. So many past world champions, national champions, series champions, and probably the most open in terms of car competitiveness, in terms of many teams and cars think that they're able to win. And yeah, we're in for probably the most open season anyone can remember.
And we've got multiple champions. You just saw a shot of Gordon Shedden. There's the reigning TCR International Series champion, J.K. Vernet. And he is one of a number of drivers with experience of the cars, the TCR spec cars, which are new to this international series. So he knows the cars, but he doesn't know any of the tracks, and he doesn't know the tyre. The drivers who are in last year's World Touring Car Championship, like the reigning champion Ted Bjerg, knows the track, knows the tyres, but doesn't know the car. So we've got a whole different set of combinations, and they've got newcomers like three-time British Touring Car champion Gordon Shedden, who knows the three-race format for the weekend, but doesn't know any of the tracks or the cars. So all sorts of combinations coming in this year. And, yeah, potentially at least 20 of our 25 drivers you'd expect to win a race at some stage this season. New things this year for those that have been regular WTC followers are a 3-race weekend. So Saturday, or day one, it's not always going to be a Saturday, the Nürburgring and Zandvoort, for instance, it won't necessarily be all the same format. The first day will have a single 30-minute qualifying session and one race. And then the second day, which will normally be the Sunday, will have a 3-part qualifying session, as we saw over the last few years, leading down to a top 5 shootout. And then the first of the races on the final day of the competition will be with a reverse top 10 grid, and the second will be with the fastest man in the qualifying session starting at the front and leading the field away. So the first thing we got to do is try and dry this track out and find some grip. The Circuit Moulay Hassan here in Marrakech, used only twice last year for Formula E and for WTCC, and this is its first use since we were last here at this time last year. So it has been a very dusty track over the last few days, and now, as you can see, a little bit of overnight rain. So let's take a look at our runners and riders. Well, here's a great combination. First of all, the only 2 Golfs in the field. So the Volkswagen Golf GTI, Rob Huff, 2012 FIA World Touring Car Champion, and behind him Mehdi Benani, who finished just outside. We just eased out of the top 3 in the final race weekend last year in the Drivers' Championship, but he's a multiple Independence champion. Now, there's no Independence title this year, Richard. It's all about that one prize, isn't it? About the Drivers' title.
Yeah, and that makes it a lot easier for everybody to understand, and it's a straight fight between all the competitors. So, yeah, the game is very much open for everybody. This circuit is notoriously low grip at the best of times, even in the blazing sunshine. So it's very sandy, it's very dirty. It's obviously not a permanent circuit. So to add all the rain, it's going to bring all the oil to the top of the circuit. It's going to be very ginger for these drivers on these opening laps.
Well, there you're looking down at the Lukoil Leopard Audis. Now, that's a pair of cars being run by Pierre Dieudonné, and that's for the reigning TCR Series champion, Jean-Carl Vernet. He's the first of those 2 cars, and the other one for the 3-time British Touring Car champion, and that is Gordon Shedden. Well, there's a 4-time World Touring Car champion, Ivan Muller, and he's running his own pair of cars. They're the brand new Hyundai i30 TCR. So YMR, Ivan Muller Racing, running a car for Ivan Muller, because you would, and for Ted Björk, last year's World Touring Car Champion. So that's a really strong driver lineup. And we've got a whole host of kind of new boys, drivers coming in from different categories. Just saw Nathaniel Berton. He's been a single-seater racer and more recently a sports prototype racer in ELMS and World Endurance Championship. So this is his first time ever racing a front-wheel drive car. So that in itself is going to be a huge learning curve, because he's going to expect it to do things by instinct that it really doesn't want to do.
Yeah, I mean, he's a fantastically talented driver, so I'm sure he's going to get on top of things. But even if you look at Jean-Carl Vernet, last season was his 2nd season in touring cars, and he claimed the title of the series he was in. But the year before, you could see at some circuits he was just struggling with the technique just a little, which held him back, and I suspect that it will be the same for Berton this year.
Fabrizio Giovanardi there. Now, there's another great name. In the Alfa Romeos, we've not only got an Italian team running it, run by racer Michele Cerruti, but also 2 fantastic names. Fabrizio Giovanardi, it needs no introduction. He's a former World Touring Car regular and a multiple Italian, British Touring Car champion, European Touring Car champion. And so in the first of those Alfa Romeos, and in the second, another ex-Grand Prix driver of about the same vintage, Gianni Morbidelli. Now, they are 2 of 3 or 4 drivers already in their 50s in this championship. We've got teenagers, we've got an 18-year-old, and the oldest driver in the field is edging up towards his mid-50s. Even Gordon Shedden was telling me last week, when he was a boy, he had posters of the Alfa Romeo of Gabriele Tarquini on his wall because he was such a touring car fan. Now he's racing against them, and some of the kids that are racing have guys like Gordon Shedden as their bedroom wall hero. So we've got 3 generations, 3 tiers now of touring car experience mingled in this field.
Touring car racing, very, very technique driven. So a lot of these sort of older hands, they're still at the top of their game because they've just honed that technique that's required for these type of racing cars, and therefore some of them are still the best in the business. So it's a fantastic mix of young and old, and all the advantages and disadvantages that go with that.
You see there's relatively little spray. The track was declared wet nice and early, so of course there's no option. Everybody is out on wets. It's far too wet even to think of a slick yet. But the more the cars go round, and with 25 cars, you know, that's a lot of cars going round to help dry the track out. There's no breeze, unfortunately. A little bit of breeze would help. It is overcast. It's not particularly cold, so track temperature will be sort of 11, 12 degrees maybe. What we need is for the cloud to break up and the sun to come out, and then the track will dry pretty quickly. It'll still be low grip, and Pepe Oriola, again, regular touring car racing fans will know his name from World Touring Cars and from the TCR series. In fact, one of the drivers that you ran for a couple of years in the TCR series, Richard. And Pepe's got lots of potential, hasn't he? And, you know, he's at that stage of his career where he needs to become a serious contender.
Yeah, and I think Pepe's at the point where youth needs to be an advantage, not an excuse. He's still relatively young, but he's got enough experience now that he should be able to start capitalising on the opportunities he's got. But went very, very well in testing in Barcelona. Yeah, no doubt, I'm sure he'll be a multiple race winner this year.
And he knows the cars well, doesn't he? And he's driving one of the new Cupras, which is the brand new Seat high-performance brand, like, say, AMG at Mercedes, or Quattro's an Audi Sport at Audi. What effectively is a Seat Leon is badged as Cupra, in the same way that Citroën span off DS as a different brand. Seat are doing the same. Gordon Shedden coming into the pit lane, colloquially known in the British Championship as Flash, not because he's got a blinged up helicopter and a Bentley or anything and earrings like Lewis Hamilton, but Flash Gordon. You see, we're not very inventive with nicknames in the UK. So who else have we got? Okay, for All Inkle Motorsport, in the familiar red, white and black of All Inkle, 3 cars. So Yann Lachey needs no introduction to anybody who watched any races in World Touring Cars last year, because he is not just the nephew of Ivan Muller, but shares an awful lot of Ivan's features. His uncle Ivan, he's a very quick racing driver, a race winner last year. The man facing backwards is Benjamin Lessen. Now he's standing in for Thiago Montero in that Honda Civic. And Thiago is here, he's fit and well, but he's not quite recovered enough from his testing shunt in Barcelona last year to be driving cars. So at the moment, young 18-year-old Benjamin Lessen is standing in for him. And I would say perhaps for maybe even the first half of the season, we're likely to see Lessen in the car. He's been touted very much as a star, potentially of this season, but certainly of the future. So he could easily come in like Lachey did last year and hit the ground running, coming with a big bang. Now, it looks like Flash has got, well, it's not a disc problem, so something else going on with the car.
Maybe a bit of pad bedding.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of work that can be done setup-wise while the conditions are so changeable, so it would perhaps make sense to bet a set of pads for qualifying later on today.
We just saw a shot of Aurélien Comte. He is driving one of the 2 DG Sport Peugeot 308 TCRs. Now, he's done all their development work. 19 years old, Aurélien. So not a man who's raced at this level before, but he's very familiar with the car. This is the first venture into TCR for Peugeot with the 308 that is essentially sort of a development of their 308 Cup car, which has done a lot of, obviously, 308 Cup racing, but also Creventic racing and so on, in endurance racing for touring cars. But this is their first effort as a TCR car, and run by Eric Nev, the man who ran the factory Chevrolet team for a number of years. He's back managing cars rather than managing the championship as he was last year. So that is a 2-car effort. So 2 Volkswagens, 2 Peugeots, a fleet. There's half a dozen Audis, there's a fleet of half a dozen or more Cupras, and half a dozen or so Hondas as well. We'll get through those. At the moment, Rob Huff fastest in first free practice. Mehdi Benani, his teammate, is in second. J.K. Verne, third fastest ahead of Ted Björk. So the 2 reigning champions, third and fourth. Gabriele Tarquini, we haven't talked about him. He's in 5th position. He's in one of the BRC racing team Hyundai i30s, and Gabriele, the man really with designer Andrea Adamo, who has kind of developed that Hyundai for its entry into TCR. So Tarquini is 5th fastest, and Norbert Michelis in 6th. You can see the yellow Honda of Tom Coronel, very familiar colours. And the Dutchman back yet again, and really rubbing his hands with glee, said, you know, I've been making others look good for the last few years, really since the BMW and Seat days, because he didn't have a factory Chevy, didn't have a factory Citroen, so it was tough to shine. But he's really looking forward to getting in amongst amongst the medals, yeah, up on the podium, hopefully getting some race wins during the course of the season.
And that's what's so exciting about these technical regulations. It's a real leveller in terms of how the cars are allowed to compete with one another. So drivers like Tom, who were sort of waiting for the crumbs from the table previously, just because of the equipment he had, you know, now hopefully he'll be able to challenge for wins at the right time over the season.
Well, there's a lot of men up and down the pit lane, and I'm sure an awful lot of fans who are rubbing their hands, hoping that this is going to return to something like the glory days of Super Touring or the early days of Super 2000, when there were lots of customer cars. They're manufacturer supported. There's no actual manufacturer teams running the cars. Audi Sport have got customer racing support here. Seat Sport have got customer racing support. In fact, Seat are supporting the Cupras and the Golfs and the Audis, because it's all predominantly the same family platform from the VAG group. And Hyundai have got their customer racing support in place for their teams. The Peugeot support network to support their 2 cars as well. And the Alphas actually are sort of fairly much out on their own with Romeo Ferrari's team run by Michele Ceruti. So the Alphas, smaller engine, the rules here are for 2-litre production-based engines, turbocharged. They produce around 350 horsepower. The Alpha's unfortunately struggling along with 1750cc and not the power that they need. It's a fairly undeveloped car, so don't expect to see them right towards the sharp end at the quicker tracks. Ivan Muller rolling slowly along in his Hyundai, right in the middle of the road with the brakes on, not quite sure why. Maybe making sure that he's got the feel in the pedal.
Or maybe a bit of brake bedding again.
Yeah. There you are, he's just gone straight across the chicane. Now, one of the things that everybody was doing a lot in Barcelona last week in the test day was bedding in brakes. Lots and lots of brake changes and lots of in and outs of the pits to bed in pads and all of that. So you would hope, I mean, this is quite a high brake use circuit, particularly when it's hot, which obviously it isn't this morning. But that ambient temperature isn't the biggest factor, it's how much you use the brakes and the retardation that you need from high speed.
And how close the corners are together. The brakes never really recover from critical temperature.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have big braking zones, but as long as there's enough fresh air then before the next corner, you get the brake temperatures down, whereas here the brakes never really get a chance to recover temperature-wise.
Coronel being run by a team new to the championship. You can see above the door there the name of the Bousson-Gignon racing team. Team started by Thierry Boutsen, the former Grand Prix driving Belgian, and one of his main sponsors when he was a racing driver. And that team has been very successful, predominantly racing GT3, GT4 cars in European GT racing. Very well drilled, very well rehearsed. And this is their first major foray into touring car racing. So they've got a good lineup, good setup with Tom Coronel in one of their 2 cars. And again, trying to remember exactly whose name is above the door on the first day back at school. Who's the other Boutsen car? Oh, Thiago Montero's car. So that's the one being driven by Benjamin Lessen. Aurélien Comte and Matto Homola. Matto Homola getting his first full-time break in World Touring Cars, a man who's been a regular racer in the European Touring Car Championship. And that's it. Those 2 guys in the Peugeot. It's a very young team. So a young team in all sorts of ways. 2 young drivers with not a huge amount of experience. New team to the championship. So Eric Neves definitely got his hands full.
Yeah, and I think probably looking at the form book, which is very difficult to read at this stage of the season, I'd say it's the Peugeot team and the Alfa Romeo team that have most got their work cut out to catch up with the other teams at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. So on board with Pepe Oriola, the man in front, Frederick Vervisch, another man who's new to touring car racing. Again, he comes with a starry CV behind him, and he's one of 4 cars, 4 Audi A3s run by Com2U Racing. So they have Denis Dupont, the Belgian driver, Aurélien Panis, who raced last year in a Zengo Motorsport Honda. They've got Frederick Vervisch and Nathaniel Berton. So a Franco-Belgian lineup in drivers, and they've been very successful in the TCR International Series, and I think they raced in TCR Europe as well. But they've got plenty of experience with the cars, haven't they? So their big learning curve will be working out the circuits.
Yeah, and some of the regulations are slightly different, and things are... There's lots of things that are subtleties, but they've really got to focus on them, because otherwise they're going to be the things that cost you points.
Last week, brand new cars arrived for Zoltán Zengo, the man there sitting at the pit wall with the headset on. And Zengo Motorsport are back with, again, 2 Hondas and 2 young Hungarian drivers. Norbert Nagy makes his full season World Touring Car debut. And the second of the Cupra is run by Zengo for another young Hungarian, Zoltán Szabo. So, as he did before, Zoltán Zengo bringing on 2 young drivers. His star pupil, of course, Norbert Michelis. And Norby has got to be among the championship favourites, despite the fact the Hyundai that he's driving is a brand new car. He knows the series well enough, and we know him as a racing driver. He's got what it takes. So is this man, Esteban Guerreri, another one of the all-Inkle Motorsport cars. And the surprise addition to the team last Wednesday was James Thompson. René Munich had an entry for 3 cars. He was going to drive one himself. The day before they had the media days in Barcelona last week, James Thompson got a call saying, do you fancy doing some races? You better get yourself a licence, a medical, and over to Barcelona for the press launch. So it was a frantic 24 hours, but Jimmy T back in the paddock. And again, he hasn't raced for 18 months, but he's got the potential to really put the cat among the pigeons. You know, you've got to accept that this is as level a playing field as most of these drivers have experienced in touring cars, even the most experienced, and so the chances to really shine are entirely in the driver's hands.
They are. I was speaking to James yesterday, and I think the only thing that really concerns him is he's feeling a little bit less prepared than the other drivers, and feels a bit on the back foot, and this isn't an easy circuit to come to. It's not a conventional circuit, so I think this weekend might be a little bit of a struggle for him, but hopefully he'll get a lot more further outings, because he's got a lot of experience, and you know, a former champion, and he's also won numerous races at World Touring Car level, so he's got a lot of experience.
Well, last time he was here 2 years ago, he was on the front row of the reverse grid in the wet, leading down to the left-hand hairpin that just follows after the first couple of corners. He was torpedoed off out of the lead by somebody who missed his braking. So he has got the potential to be right in the mix. As you say, it hasn't tested, it was in Barcelona on Wednesday and Thursday. They were only running on the track on Thursday, so that was his first time in a TCR car of any kind, and his first time in a racing car for 18 months. His layoff hasn't been quite as long, though, as one of his former teammates, Fabrizio Giovanardi, who's currently lying 12th fastest in the Alfa. Giovanardi had raced just once in 3 years, and that was in an Italian national race. So Giovanardi's been away a while. Gianni Morbidelli there is currently not on... Oh, yes, he is. He's page 1 on the timing screen, so he's in 14th. And actually, for the Alphas, a short, tight circuit like this, where you don't get right up to top speed, where you don't get maximum velocity, and also where you can't maybe harness all your power, they're actually flattered a little, perhaps, by the conditions, because they're both in the top half of the field, and that probably isn't going to happen at a lot of racetracks.
We'll see what happens in terms of their development over the winter, but last year I would say that Alfa Romeo really struggled with long, constant radius corners where you needed the true handling of the car. So somewhere like here, where there aren't too many of those style corners, could play into Alfa Romeo's hand. And this is one of the slowest circuits on the calendar as well. Yeah. Cars are only touching around 200 kilometers an hour. But yeah, it's probably the slowest circuit that the championship visits. So again, perhaps built to flatter the Alfa Romeo this weekend.
You saw Aurélien Comte go flying by Mehdi Benani, and tucking down the inside is Mato Homola. One of the great things about these young drivers coming through, of course, is that it continues or starts new stories. You know, I can remember when James Thompson was a young pup getting his first touring car drive. I can remember Ivar Muller racing in single-seaters in Formula 3000, winning in British Formula 2, probably more years ago than either of us would care to mention. But, you know, these young guys starting their own stories the way that Gordon Shedden did years ago in the British Touring Car Championship. But they can't be overawed. Shedden's definitely got brake problems, hasn't he, judging by the hands. They can't be overawed by, like, the star names they're racing again. You're 18, 19, 20. You've just got to take these guys as if they're racing at your level in a national championship and get on with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just focus on the job that you can do.
Yeah.
The circuit's not really drying that much. There's a few corners where it's just starting to sort of dry a little, but of course there's not really much wind here. There's no sunshine.
What you're also seeing here, the high gloss parts, this is part of the old layout of the circuit. That's a big chicane there, and so those painted areas had walls over or paint on them, and they don't resurface the roads here because they don't break up in the winter like they do in Northern Europe, because this is their winter and it's just damp. So the things don't get destroyed. So there is paint all over the place from the previous circuit layout on a lot of the corners, and that's definitely going to take a long time to produce any traction.
Yeah, and I think also the big thing on the drivers' minds, well, there's only an hour and a half between the end of this session and the start of the next session, which is likely to have better running conditions.
Yeah.
So nobody can really afford to have any damage to affect the next session, because, of course, straight after that, we've got qualifying for race 1.
Well, of course, this is a new headset for everybody, isn't it? Apart maybe from Gordon Shedden, who's used to 3 race weekends. But in British touring cars, they're 3 races on the same day, so it's even more critical to avoid damage. It used to be the format with 2 races on the same day. In race 1, you knew you had to survive it, particularly if you qualified well, because you're going to be at the sharp end in race 2, and you couldn't afford to start from the back of the grid or in the pit lane. So there was a degree of holding back in race 1. Now there's going to have to be, you're going to have to mix aggression with caution in all 3 races, particularly if it stays damp or gets damp again. There's Rob Huff. Again, all of that paint that was put down yesterday afternoon is still damp, unfortunately, after the water on it, and is coming all over the road. But the problem is, there's 25 cars and points for the top 10. So somewhere in there, fewer people are going to score points than are going to score no points. So you want to make sure you avoid the zeros. So you've got to combine caution with actually getting on with it. These aren't, you know, hour-long races. It's not a GT race. You can't wait indefinitely. You've got to race. You've got to get on with it and get some points on the board.
Absolutely. I just think this session in free practice is going to be so unrepresentative for the rest of the weekend that I don't think anyone's pushing that hard yet.
Well, there's the Com2U racing team running their 4 cars. This is the BRC. So these are the factory Hyundai colours. If you watch World Rally, you'll recognise that sort of turquoise and orange livery. And the Hyundai N brand, which is their sort of RS or AMG or whatever, that's the brand that is being represented here by the TCR cars. So we've got 4 run by Ivar Muller Motorsport and BRC Racing Team. So 4 Hyundai i30s. We've got these half dozen Audi A3s, 4 run by Com2U. So that's a big bunch of cars. And the other 2, the Audi Sport Leopard, which I'm going to call Leopard for most of the season, so let's live with that. The Lukoil team. Johnny Morbidelli. Now, I wonder if they've just rotated the tyres a little to give them a fresh set on the front, get them scrubbed in. Gordon Shedden goes off at the end of the front straight. That was him turning around, I think. See him shoot out of view down at the bottom of the screen here. And Flash is last at the moment on the timesheets. And we saw him in the pits a couple of times, and that hand signal he was giving, just pushing his palm forward through the windscreen to the engineer, just he's got nothing when he goes for the brake pedal, and that's why he's just gone straight up the escape road. Rob Huff being chased by Jimmy Thompson. Ted Björk and J.K. Verne, by the way, top of the timesheets at the moment. Nat Berton has just gone 10th fastest. That's not bad in the rain. And another of the Hondas, who was that down the escape road? I'm guessing that was Benjamin Lessen. So there's the fastest man of all, and his team boss behind him. 68, third fastest. Now that would normally, Frederick Vervisch has gone around again. 68 would normally be Ivan Muller. 68 is no longer Ivan Muller, because when Ivan retired from driving and went to the pit wall last year, after that, Jan Erlaché assumed car number 68 on his entry this year. And there was Flash running wide, or running straight on at any rate.
Yeah, clearly an ongoing issue there.
Yeah, still got no brakes. Mind you, everybody's just running out of grip. They're all pushing it a little more, aren't they? How do you spin turn a handbrake? The lever of fever there. Do they have handbrakes in TCR cars?
Yes, they do, yeah.
Right, okay.
Normally they're quite often set to the front axle, so it's not the same for every car, but yeah, some of them do.
Yeah, front axle handbrake, like Mark 1 Fiestas. That caught me by surprise one day, driving my mother's car. Wasn't quite the handbrake turn I was expecting. So J.K. Verne, second fastest in the Leopard Lukoil Audi. Jan Erlaché, third quickest. Yeah, he lives in the same region of France, where the regional number is 68, as Ivan Muller. And so he assumes 68. 69, Jean-Carl Verne, which would normally be James Thompson's number for comedy reasons, which presumably is exactly the same comedy reason that J.K. Verne chose it. So Jan Erlaché is now 68. So without his traditional race number, what did Ivan Muller do? Well, he went for 48, which is his age. And I said, oh, is that why Fabrizio Giovanardi went for 88 then? So Ivan Muller second fastest. Ted Björk and Ivan Muller, the two YMR Hyundai i30s, first and second. Now, don't read too much into that, other than they are both very quick, experienced with this circuit, and know where they're going and what they're doing. J.K. Verne, third fastest. And again, he's got the experience, so that's an Audi. So you've got Hyundai, Audi. And there's JK. Oh, two wheels on the white line. So that's his brake issue, is it's not a problem with the pedal, it's just a problem with where the wheels were. And unfortunately, that's a bit of a problem as well. You don't move against the direction of travel anywhere on a race circuit, but I'm sure they won't penalise him too much for that. Ted Björk, fastest sector on this lap as well, fastest first sector of all. And Ivan Muller 4/10 behind him. Rob Huff now third quickest. Pepe Oriola's just banged in a fast lap to go fourth quickest with a minute left in the session. Verne fifth, Michelis sixth, Tarquini seventh, Erlaché eighth. We haven't talked about Esteban Guerreri, ninth fastest for the Argentine. And he could easily end the season as the champion. James Thompson 10th. So he might be rusty, but he's not slow. Nat Berton 11th. Fabrizio Giovanardi 12th. Bonani 13th. Gianni Morbidelli 14th. And that escape road is certainly welcoming a few victims, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very tricky braking zone into that turn. It's not that straight on the lead up to the corner, so it's very, very easy to snatch a wheel into there.
So, last few seconds of the session. And right now, this is really, really critical for everybody to get as much information as they can. Checkered flag is out. Ted Björk fastest of all. Gabriele Tarquini back in the garage. Denis Dupont third, 24th, and Gordon Shedden 25th. Trying to find the second page of timing on our monitors, but it appears to be...
Szabo's just had a little off
Ooh,
on
oh dear, right rear.
last lap of the session.
Yeah.
That's team's worst nightmare. Having survived the difficult conditions to then bin it on the in-lap is not a good one.
No, slid out wide there, hasn't he? And the car's going into the pit lane, but being the total pros, Ted Bjerk and Ivan Muller get every metre they can, squeezing blood out of this stone, doing every lap, going to the checkered flag, and coming across the line first and second.
Ivan only less than half a tenth of a second slower than his teammate Bjerk.
Yeah.
5 world championships between them.
41 thousandths. Rob Huff a yawning 29 thousandths further back from them. So the top three covered by 0.07, 7 hundredths of a second. 7 hundredths of a second is what it takes to blink a human eye, doctors tell us. So those three across the line, if it was a drag race, it would be a proper photo finish. And that's exactly what we'd hoped for. The first, don't forget, this is the first ever track session for half the teams and a good third of the drivers on this track. The first time ever in these cars in the heat of battle for a number of the drivers, and 1 second covers the first dozen in the wet. And 12th is a raw rookie, Nathaniel Berton. So that's pretty impressive from him.
So the big losers in that session, probably Gordon Shedden, has clearly got a brake issue that they don't look to have got on top of, which will be a worry going into free practice 2. Of course, Gordon doesn't know this circuit. And I'd say also the Honda looks like it's probably struggling in these conditions.
Yeah.
But of course, these aren't the conditions we're expecting to qualify in. But yeah, it looks like perhaps the Honda's slightly out the operating window. Again, not by much. We're only talking half a second from the front. But
and as it dries out, you know, this will probably be our only properly wet track session of the weekend. As it dries out, then that should balance up. I mean, Ted Bjerk must be feeling very happy that he's got a car that clearly is okay in the rain, because that was not the case with the Volvo, particularly the first time they came here, when it was very wet. They were absolutely lost. The car, they had no idea how to make it work in the rain on this track, and that took a long time to overcome as well for the Polestar Sign Racing team. And so, first session of this brand new era. Not just one Hyundai, not just two Hyundais, but both from the same garage, first and second. So between them, as you said, 5 World Touring Car Championship titles, plus Scandinavian titles as well for Ted Bjerk. French titles, British title for Ivan. There are, what did we work out? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 British Touring Car titles represented on this grid. So, and Zsolt Szabo, unfortunately, the young Hungarian, has just slid wide, and the rear of the car has tagged the tyres, and as always happens, rubber on rubber, the tyre has stopped and the car has pulled its suspension off. So Ted Bjerk starts his title defence in the best possible manner, or his quest for another title, let's say, perhaps. He is the fastest man in the very first track session. This is going to be a long campaign, Richard, isn't it? 30 races, 10 race weekend, so 30 races. So that's another, what have we got? 20 qualifying sessions as well. There's an awful lot of track action. Alex Le Guy is down in the pit lane, but let's take a look at the way they ended up. With Ted Bjerk and Ivan Muller on top in the Hyundais, Rob Huff's Golf in third, the Cupra of the Spaniard Pepe Oriola in fourth, ahead of the best of the Audis of J.K. Vernet. Just outside the top 10, Jimmy T, Nat Berton, Gianni Morbidelli, Ben Lessen and Mehdi Benani. And down on the third page, Aurelian Panis, Mato Homola, Gordon Shedden and Zsolt Szabo. Well, let's get down to the garage with Alex and hear from our fastest man.
There we have it. That's the end of FP1. Ted, you were the fastest man. What did you discover out there?
I love Morocco, Marrakech, street circuits here. No, but it's good, it's good. It was a little bit wet, but you know, after last year we've been driving so much in the wet, it just felt like home. So, no, I like it. You know, you come out now, it's the first free practice of the season. I just enjoyed the car, the driving, and the times were there instantly.
Good, car feels good then. What, now you have a little bit of a better idea perhaps of when we look ahead to the race this afternoon, 25 cars will be out there. What will it be like?
Oh, yeah, it will be interesting. Like we said before, it will be more cars, more fights. We said it, but it's cars everywhere when you come out. And it's the whole field, you know, you don't know who is fast yet and which car you should try to avoid because they are a little bit slower than you and so on, and which one you can take a tow from. So, no, I look forward to it.
Exciting times.
Thank you, Alex, and congratulations indeed to Ted Björk, YMR, Ivan Muller Racing, and to Hyundai, fastest on their debut. This is a brand new car. It's never raced anywhere before and hasn't raced here yet either. So we'll wait to see what the second session, hopefully a little less greasy, presents. So at the moment, Hyundai, Volkswagen, Cupra and Audi, 1, 2, 3, 4. And those with problems, the next session doesn't come up until 11:30, so 2 hours from now. So Zengo Motorsport have got time to change the rear of Zolt Szabo's car, but unfortunately they do have to get on with that a little bit. In fact, this session starts at 11 o'clock, 30 minutes. We'll be on air at 10:55. Greenwich Mean Time, no, 9:55 Greenwich Mean Time, 10:55 British Summer Time, 11:55 Central European Time. You can convert that wherever else you are watching us. Join us then for more action. Until then, from Marrakech, it's goodbye.